Spending the last 17 days in Israel covering the war for you. Managing editor Gaurav Sawant is with us here in the studio. Can I just tell our viewers, Gaurav, that the moment you entered the newsroom today, there was a 2-minute-long standing ovation for Gaurav, and that's thanks to the work you have done, braving it out, getting us all of those reports. I'm happy to have you here in the safe confines of our studio now, doing well, hopefully. You've covered conflict for the last many years, from 1999, Gaurav. That was the first war you covered to now. Tell us about your experience in Israel for the last 17 days. You landed there the day after the Hamas carnage.
So 7th, this terror attack took place. 8th, India Today was on ground zero. And the aim was to tell our viewers up front, live, and get them the reports, what was happening on ground. And this was a time when Hamas terrorists were still in Sderot and Ashkelon and several parts of southern Israel. Some localities where we were reporting from, we could hear gunfire happening. Police and the army stopped us from going to some localities, but we wanted our viewers to have the latest information firsthand, without any bias, without any color. So we were reporting from ground zero. And this is a terrible war. That terror attack that took place on the 7th, and what's been happening ever since. I've reported till the 17th day of this war, and we will continue to report. Shiv is on ground zero, yes. Others are on ground zero. So we want our viewers to have the information first, exclusive, the truth, and completely unbiased. We're not taking any sides in this conflict. We're showing the pain and tragedy on both
Correct.
sides of this conflict, and it's only likely to get worse as Israel prepares for that ground offensive. My information is that these will be more surgical strikes initially, specific surgical strikes to take out the Hamas leadership. The tanks perhaps will go in the second phase of this conflict. Initially, air and artillery that's been continuing non-stop. There will be shallow raids. Those shallow raids, you know what Israel is doing is, it's moving in inch by inch, occupying more territory, setting up its administrative bases, then carrying out those raids and returning to safety as they move forward. The aim, as the Prime Minister and the army, they're all on the same page, saying we will ensure Hamas does not exist as a military entity, as a leadership entity, or as a terror entity that can either threaten Israel or govern Gaza Strip.
You landed there, Gaurav, 24 hours essentially, or less than that, after the Hamas attack in parts of southern Israel. And at that point, the situation was still unfolding. You know, many of us couldn't really grasp how this conflict would move forward or how massive it is, what would be the repercussion. You're a seasoned war reporter. You've covered so many conflicts. You've covered Kargil, you've covered what's happened in Libya, you've covered Egypt, Iraq, you've covered what's happened in Lebanon, the peacekeeping mission as well. So when you touched down in Israel, did you get a sense of how massive and what kind of repercussions we're going to look at, that 18 days into the war, there are thousands of casualties on both sides?
So the figures, the moment we landed and we interacted with people I know in Israel, I've reported from there even earlier, they had told us unofficially, and we said this on India Today, that the casualty figures are higher. When they were going with a figure of 400 and 500, we knew it was more than 1,000. When they were going with a figure of dozens have been captured, dozens have been held hostage. You'd remember from Ashkelon, I reported it's over 100,
yes.
And over 150.
And now that's what they're suggesting.
And now they're saying 212, So on ground, we were getting very authentic information. Israel's a small country, but it's a country where everyone now, or at least the people we've interacted with, they have one resolve, and that is to ensure Hamas never has the capability and the capacity to do again what they've done on the 7th of October. So they're moving forward with that single-minded, in war, there are principles of war. One is aim, the other is maintenance of aim. So their aim is decimate Hamas, from their military leadership in Gaza to their political leadership and the ideologues sitting in Qatar and other parts of the world. Eliminate, neutralize, ensure they never govern. So their first aim is Gaza Strip. Their next aim is Hamas leadership, and as their young MP, Sharon Haskell told me, and several others, that the hydra-headed monster of whether it's Hezbollah or Hamas or the Houthi rebels, according to Israel, is Iran. So they want to ensure that Iran is not in a position to fund these terrorist outfits in future. That's easier said than done. But America is standing very strongly with Israel at this point of time. And it's not just in 2 aircraft carrier strike groups in the Mediterranean Sea. From what I have been told, there are American generals on ground. They're not guiding this war. They're not leading this war. They're not boots on ground. But they are there telling the Israeli generals that we are here with you. Think coolly, think calmly. It's retribution, but retribution should not get more fatalities. So remember, the Americans have fought and decimated the ISIS terror in Mosul, in Syria. And, I'd covered America's war. Even we reported from ground zero in Mosul when America was going after the ISIS terrorists. And that was a time when several Indians had been held hostage, you'd recall. And Minister of State General V.K. Singh had gone. So we were reporting from Iraq. And the Americans say it took them about 8-9 months to do this. So this will be a long drawn-out affair, especially when Hamas is so well entrenched at the Gaza Strip. But America and Israel together intend doing this whatever it takes.
I want to talk about your personal experience. We're putting out some of these images. Some of those videos I remember was from the initial days of the war, when we could hear bombs, missiles going off behind you and you were running into bomb shelters. You were all alone, essentially, Gaurav. In most of our reporting experiences, we always have our camera person, our video journalist with us. In this case, you were your own video journalist as well. So you were flying solo in many of these situations. As someone, and I've repeated this several times, you're a seasoned war reporter. You're someone with great experience in doing this. And yet, I'm sure every time you go into covering a war, it is extremely daunting. It is extremely scary. So tell us about what your experience has been. What was the one moment that you did feel that, look, this is kind of going out of hand?
So several such moments. When I reached Ashkelon, there's massive shelling that was happening, and Ashkelon is in Tel Aviv. A rocket that's fired by Hamas in the Gaza Strip, from the Gaza Strip, takes about 1.5 minutes to reach Tel Aviv. So you have 1.5 minutes to get to a bomb shelter. The moment that siren is sounded, you have 1.5 minutes. When I was in Sderot, or right at the Gaza Strip, at the front line with the Israeli soldiers, and then when the siren goes off, you have less than 30 seconds. You have less than 30 seconds where you're not oriented. You don't know where is the bomb shelter. So you just look for, where can I go where I'll be under something that my head will be protected, my body will be protected, because some of these air bursts or the rocket may not hit, it may split mid-air, and it's like red hot lava of iron, hundreds of shreds, shrapnel falling from the skies that could, it could slice off your shoulder, it could slice off your head into two, it could embed itself in any part of your body and you'd be dead. So your aim, while you're wearing a bulletproof jacket to protect your chest and your back, and the helmet protects your head, you could lose a leg, you could lose a limb.
So much it can protect.
There your aim was rush to safety, take shelter behind anything. So I've been fortunate, I've done that risk assessment. There's a course that you're supposed to do when you cover conflict, and I've been very privileged that I was sent out to do that course in the United Kingdom. That kind of helps you, and some of the lessons stay, because whether it's you're covering counterinsurgency in Jammu and Kashmir, or you're covering Libya, a country that we entered illegally, from Egypt when the civil war was on, there are some basic lessons that you keep in mind and you follow them. Very essential, you should have your own medical kit, you should have your food and water with you at all times. And somebody has to know where you are. Because when I went into the West Bank, or when I went into some pockets, even in southern Israel, where nobody was there, and I was going in with perfect strangers at times, I would send back my location, to office and to my house. So they would know my last known location.
But is it a little scary? Because I'm sure many of these locations, you don't have mobile signal. Like I said, you were all alone. You may have made friends, acquaintances on ground, but that's about it. And you have no mobile signal.
It's true. So that is very risky, but that's where you're in a position, you're able to get that story back. And as authentic, we try to get to the source. I try to speak to Israeli army officers, police officers, victims of terror. When I went to places like Kibbutz Biri or Nehal Oz, where some of the worst terror strikes had taken place, and interacted with people there, the effort was to get to the source, get information firsthand, get as many people as possible on camera to say what they were.